I'm going to go ahead and talk about the videos from chapter 2. So first I'm going to start with the TED Talk. And I thought it was a very interesting video. I really enjoyed listening to that TED Talk. Um, and I think the biggest thing I took away was that when it talked about that it's important to remember that you're teaching end of year expectations. I think a lot of times as teachers, we get fed up with, if a student doesn't master a skill, like, oh no, what are we going to do? How can we help them? What do we need to do? Um, and then you need to think about, like, it's only November. We have the entire year to kind of master that skill and keep working on it until we can, understand that particular concept. And so I thought that was pretty cool and something to think about as we're teaching our students. Um, and then it started talking about sticky learning. Um, you learn it once a year and you're expected to understand it and keep that in your brain. So you have your unit, then you take your test, and then you get a check mark. You do well on that test, but then it does not stick per se. Um, and I really liked how when she started talking about spiraling the curriculum, she said, try something new, no one will die. And, just thinking about that, it's important to take risks and it's important to try new things. If your students aren't succeeding, you need to take those risks in order to see results. So when she started talking about spiraling the curriculum, and she started saying that, it's just a change in our thinking. You return to content and your key details throughout the year. Um, and our math curriculum at our school is actually a spiraled curriculum right now called Everyday Math. And it took a very long time for our teachers to kind of get used to it. Um, I will say that in the special ed field, we did start with it, but it was kind of a little difficult for my students because we would learn one thing and then all of a sudden we'd go on to a different thing, and you know they they just struggled a little bit. They my students kind of do better when we learn one thing and then we keep practicing and practicing in order for them to kind of master that skill. Um, but our general education teachers do like the spiraling curriculum now that they've kind of gotten used to it for that math curriculum. Then she started talking about massed versus spaced learning. And she talked about how for massed learning, the grandma knows the birds' names, so then you have to study those names, but then your retention is weak, right? You'll learn those names, and then grandma will come back 5 months later, and then you'll forget them. So your retention is pretty weak. Whereas spaced learning, you practice a skill, you wait, you move on to something else, then you practice that skill again, and then you move on to something else. And that is shown to have a higher retention rate. So students would be able to learn that concept a little bit better. Then they started talking about interleaving and block practicing. Interleaving kind of helps with compare and contrast of different concepts. Um, Block teaching or block practice, you teach about one thing for a week and then another the next. And then when you go back, it's hard to remember that first week, which I can see. And then I think it was interesting that they did a study and they did one with interleaving and one with block. And 38% of students did well with blocked practice, and 72% of students did well with interleaving practice. So that kind of just shows you um, that it is working, and you just have to change your way of thinking, I guess, if you want to take that big risk. Then it said, I like this, teachers change their practice when their students are successful. You have to take those risks in order to see change, and then if you see your students are successful, it's well worth it. So that's kind of what I took away from the first TED Talk. Um, the second video, it kind of talked about how human nature, it said that human nature is the enemy, which I kind of agree with. As people, we get into routines, we get into different situations, and that's just the norm, and so it's very hard to change that norm. Um, And so it talked about how there's distinctive disciplines, which leads to that knowledge, and then acculturation. You kind of get initiated into the discipline, which I can see in schools, especially college. You know, we are learning in um, in mastering that discipline. Um, and then I really liked how it said that individuals are constantly in an upward direction in search of the unknown. So we are constantly learning, we are constantly searching, and we are constantly, um, you know, in that upward direction to learn new things in search of the unknown. So that's kind of what I took away from these two videos. I really enjoyed watching them, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.